Alrighty, welcome back. Today we're going to be working on the mini train project, and we're going to be working on the wheel. So pay attention. It can be a little rough. So let me share my screen here, and we can get started. So let's go. Alrighty, so here we go. How do we start this? Now, obviously, we're going to have to revolve this. So what we need is we're going to need a central axis. So I'm actually going to be using this x-axis as our central axis. So it's easier just for me to click and draw a quick little line, hit escape. Then I can right click on that line and make it a construction line. Okay. What that does is just gives us something to revolve around. So there's a bunch of ways we can do this. One of the things you see is that we have a typical radius that we fill it at the end and smooth over all the edges, which means I can box everything off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start and give myself another line to work from, which again, just make sure it's horizontal. And the length of that line, all right, is what we're going to be looking at next. So the length, we don't really have to worry about that right now, but you could just say that the length can be the overall width of the wheel if you want to kind of make it a little bit easier for yourself, which is 0.25. This is going to be the overall width here. So if we're going to be building this shape, I'm going to build it a little bit backwards, actually. Not that it really matters, but let's just start by building this up. So the shape then comes up a little bit, all right? And so you have to know how far up it comes, right? But it only tells us from the center point. So I can just come up here and hit escape, and I can actually dimension from this point to here. And you could take that measurement right off your drawing sheet, which is 0.25. Okay. And when we do that, that kind of shows you that, okay? And we have to be able to dimension from here to here, which is going to be the radius of that hole. All right. So if we take a look at the radius of the inside hole, it's 0.28. So 0.28 divided by 2, because it's going to be a radius because we're going to revolve. Okay. And so that's good. So here's the starting point of our shape. And again, I can move some of this stuff around so you can actually see what's going on. All right. So all I have is 2 lines here defining the bottom corner. The next thing that I want to know is I want to know this next line here. And this line, I'm going to just click and hit escape here. I can show you another way to do this. I can start at the center, and I know all the way up to the top of the curved edge of the wheel, there's a little center point there. And that little center point there is 1 from the center point. So I can just click 1, enter. I'll hit home so that way we can see this. All right. And I can just go over here and trim that little piece off. So now I have this entire thing here. And this is how big that this is going to be. All right. And we have another squared off portion here that's only 1/4 of an inch. So what I can do is I can start from over here, over 0.25. Well, look, it actually lines up and makes a square. So you could start off with a square if you really wanted, but I'm not too concerned about that right now. And once we have this little piece here, so we have this solid back, all right, there, which is solid, and then in the front, this comes down. Here it looks like 1 inch minus 0.75 inches, which is 0.25. And then it kind of curls back in this way, all right? And it curls back in this way 0.125, or half that distance, right? And then as you can imagine, this is going to come down. You see how I just have it so it meets up? And there's my shape. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to take a circle, and that circle is going to be from here to this edge, so it's tangent with both points. All you have to do, I don't have to measure that out. And then I'm just going to trim this up. You're not going to let me trim that last piece. That's okay. And I should have closed geometry. And we're going to test if I have closed geometry in a minute, because I'm going to try to revolve. And I need that shape. It's my profile. And this is my axis down here. Whoop. And now I have a wheel. And to finish off my geometry, I'm going to take my fillet, and my fillet, it says typical, right? It says 0.0625 typical, 0.0625. And what's 0.0625? This, 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 and this. There we go. All right, and there's the basis for our wheel. Pretty simple, right? Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this around. All right, I'm going to flip this around. And I want to put a new sketch here. What I'm going to do now is something a little different. If you take a look at these patterns are all separated by, it looks like degrees. So it says 30 degrees. And it says we have about 15 degrees up, 15 degrees up, and about 30 degrees apart for these little lines. And we have two little circles here that we're using to define everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with this circle here. And this smaller circle, if you look here, is pointing at a radius of 0.375. So 0.375 radius, but since I'm making a circle defined by its diameter, I'm going to multiply that by 2. And then you have this outermost of these little shapes we have here. And I'm going to hit escape. Sometimes it'll stop and give you something you don't want, and that one is going to be 0.625. And again, it gave us a radius, so we have to multiply that by 2 to give us a diameter. Okay, there we go. I'm going to hit home and zoom in. And you can see sometimes it'll give us the stuff that I don't want, so I'm just going to delete these because there's no need to have those. All right. So all I did was I defined the inside and the outside of these little cutouts, and these cutouts are simply defined by the degrees. They're offset by 30 degrees to each other, and they're only 30 degrees wide. And there's 6 of them. So all I really have to do is come over here, line. All right, so if that's 90 degrees, and I want to offset a certain amount, what I can do is grab my dimension, and I want to offset this. All right, let me hit escape here. I'm going to take this, I'm going to put, I'll put another line in here. And then I'll put a third line in here, just so you can see how I'm going to do this. Escape. And I'm going to offset. I'm going to take this line here, hit escape, right-click, construction. And then I'm going to offset this from the center, here to here, 15 degrees, here to here, 15 degrees. And now you can see the shape that I want. Since I only want that little shape, I'm going to trim off the rest of this stuff that I don't want, so the computer doesn't get confused when I try to extrude this. So once I have one shape, that's all I really need is that one shape. I can just extrude, cut to next, swing around to the front. There we go. And it should look like one shape. Ooh, look at that. Now all I have to do is, while I'm in this 3D mode, is I have to just circular pattern. I want a circular pattern that, or I want a circular pattern that extrusion, either way. That's my feature. And my rotational axis is going to be any one of these circles. All right, and I want 6 of them. Feature, extrusion, and there we go. We want 6 of them. And that's it. The last thing that we have to do is put this little peg on here. And so I'm going to go to this surface, new sketch, and since I built it this way and I offset this by 15 degrees, I automatically have some place now to put down this little peg, because it says it's right in between these. So that just makes it easier for me to line everything up. So I can actually start on this axis, which makes it a lot easier. And how big does this need to be? Well, I'm just looking at the bottom part of this circle, and that's it. All right. So the bottom part of that circle is 0.25. Right, and it's going to give us a distance. All right, the distance of that circle and the edge, the center point of that circle and the edge, is 0.7. So I'm going to click from here to the very center of that, and that needs to be 0.7, and it's going to overlap in there, which is okay. And so now I'm just going to finish the sketch, and I'm going to extrude that where it needs to be. It sticks out quite a bit, and you can kind of see how it automatically grabbed that. It's not quite that much. I mean, it's a little much. How far does that stick up? 0.375. There we go. And now let's go to the next little bit here. The next little bit, new sketch, zoom in, another circle. All right, this next little circle here that we're going to extrude up 1/8 of an inch is actually 0.125. Finish, extrude, 0.125. And then lastly, new sketch, home, circle. Now this is really small, this one. This has a diameter of 0.0625, right? And then I want to extrude just that tiny little circle, and I want to cut it. And they want that tiny little circle to go to a depth of 0.25. There you go. It's a pretty long hole. All right, there it goes. It goes all the way down in there. And there's your wheel. All right, seems to be the most efficient way to go about doing it. All right, and you can see we just offset the geometry using angles that time and some circles to define that. All righty, so again, hopefully that was helpful, and I will see you all next time.